Let's talk about how to find a ketamine provider. My name's Christy Myers. Harm reduction is a huge component in the psychedelic space. And right now, if you are on the precipice of experiencing or want to experience a psychedelic assisted therapy, you're not ready yet to go out of country and experience a psychedelic that can last, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16 hours, and you want to get your feet wet in country locally. Ketamine is the most appropriate, legal, medically supervised, and has 25 years of data to back it, psychedelic, readily accessible to you. So I created this guide allowing you to have a meaningful conversation with a ketamine provider. You're basically interviewing them, you guys, right? You need to make sure because there are bad actors in this space. So, one of the most important things is that you need to make sure there is a proper mental health screening. No, it's not to label you or any of those things like that. It literally is a due diligence piece so that we can make sure that you are clinically appropriate for ketamine infusion therapy. So, some diagnoses like schizophrenia, schizoaffective, certain types of mania, bipolar 1 and 2, depending on the pharmacological load, how it was diagnosed, because sometimes bipolar is definitely and can be misdiagnosed, especially if it was episodic. And then, of course, psychosis. Those things do not allow you to sit in a psychedelic assisted therapy setting. And if you're not having a proper mental health screening, there can be harm done, right? We can actually create more harm than good if we're not doing thorough assessment. So if the provider doesn't have a diagnostic evaluation with a mental health professional and or there is no screening, then that's a red flag and I would encourage you to look elsewhere. Now, the next piece is how to choose a provider that honors your autonomy, meaning you should be able to sit with ketamine at least one time before you have to be forced into, or if they require you to commit to 6 infusions. I know there was a doctor here locally who was requiring you to have five, period, the end. And you had to do it with him and watch a YouTube video during the ketamine infusion. Alert, alert, right? So, you wanna make sure that the provider or the clinic is not pressuring you into a fixed series of sessions, and if you've watched any of my other videos, I go over this proverbial series of 6, right? And so, you wanna sit with the medicine one time, you wanna meet it, you wanna make sure that it is something that you want to explore and go within, and then move forward, because your reality is gonna shift. As suffering is deduced and new consciousness gets ushered in, you will start to gain insight into yourself. And that's where evolution happens. But you got to be willing to do the work. This literally is a hero's journey. Even if ketamine is categorized as a psychedelic, but not everybody acknowledges that as such, even though really the word psychedelic just means to make manifest. And you're making manifest a version of yourself that's not suffering. Ta-da! It's pretty phenomenal, and ketamine, again, here, safe now, and 25 years of data. Plus, it's getting close to its 60th birthday. Ketamine's been around for many moons. The other thing, who is holding space during your session? This is important, right? So, and perhaps I'll do a different video on this as well too, so we can, unfold a little deeper, but who's holding your space? Meaning somebody's gonna be in that room with you. However, clinics are essentially leaving you alone in a room. They give you a panic button. That right there is really concerning. They're like, "Here, ketamine's safe, but here's a panic button." What? Eh, let's just unpack this a little bit, right? So, one, providers perhaps are too busy to sit in that room. They don't feel as if they're productive. So they don't wanna be in there just to watch you have an experience. Mm, one of the greatest healings that occurs as a professional is when you learn how to hold space for someone and experience that consciousness between you and the other individual. the way that we can the way that we can really tap into our own nervous system is by the way that we learn how to sit in our own energy and not be busy or distracted, right? Not to mention, you are the grounding anchor inside that room for the other individual. Now, if you progress into your psychedelic experiences and you become, what would be coined as a psychonaut, sure, you can journey alone. A lot of people are doing it. However, when you're first working with psychedelics, especially ketamine infusion therapy, there is no way you want to be alone and worrisome in a room and then be given a panic button. And what if your dose is high enough that you actually can't feel your hands? Then you can't push that panic button, right? And sure, people are checking in on you, but that's also disruptive because they're opening and closing doors. It's just wild, right? So think about that, right? Who's holding the space? And so, importantly, you got to resonate with the person who's holding your space because it is a very personal experience and you can be extremely vulnerable. And so, it's important that you feel safe with the person who's holding your space. Visit the clinic. I can't tell you how many times I encourage people to come into my office. Come, see the space, meet me, see if I resonate outside of what we're doing on the phone. See if it's welcoming, see if it's intentional, or is it clinical and sterile? And like I just made mention, being alone with the medicine as a later step. See if they talk about setting intentions. Now, this can be a double edged sword, meaning if you've never even heard of intentions, great. If you've set intentions, also great. But here's what I know, the medicine's going to meet you where you're ready to be met. So you may set an intention like, hey, I want to get to the root cause of this. Well, the medicine's first going to show you this, and this before you get to here. Right. So again, I always tell my clients setting intentions requires you to pay attention to ultimately no tension, which is the act of surrender. So, being mindful of that, right? Or what does that look like for setting intentions and clearing the space? Now, energy is not created or destroyed. When we work with psychedelics, we essentially can off gas, right? We can change the temperature in the room. We can change the scent in the room. There's definitely odors that come off of us and other energetic purges. And so, if you go into a ketamine infusion room and the person behind you just off gassed a whole bunch of energy, there is definitely potential if the space hasn't been cleared that can get sticky icky all over you. So, do they have an energy hygiene practice? I would hope so. And again, the link to this is below. If you want to download this guide and have it for yourself, you can absolutely do so. And so this goes through all of those things, right? And also knowing that if you schedule a session and it's only 1 hour in total and the infusion is 40 minutes, that means there's about this much time to have a meaningful conversation with you, to see and allow you to land, but first settle in. Think about all the variables that happen before you get to a ketamine infusion, right? What if you took an Uber? What if you were late? What if you ran into traffic? What if you're already dysregulated? All of these things, right? It's important that your sessions are 2 hours, which is why some of the providers that do have 2 hour sessions, you're sitting in there by yourself because they aren't getting paid essentially for that hour, even though they are. We can unpack that in a different video. But right now, we're focusing on why this guide is important. So, if the session is an hour, literally you're in and you're out, you need a place to land. So ask them, right? Do you have a place for me to come back into my body? Because remember, this is a disassociative, and your consciousness is going to leave the vessel, travel to where it needs to travel through the mind, and then you come back in. And when you come back into your body, sometimes you experience, I don't know, just how tired you are, sometimes how toxic you are, dehydrated, hungry. There's some variables in there. So it's really important that you have a place to land, that you're not just in and out and back in an Uber. Maybe if you live close enough to the clinic, you can land back at your home, but that's really few and far between. Again, that's how you can tell I'm not AI, right? Rust sessions are not groovy. So ask your provider, how long is a total session? There are so many different things that we can now have more due diligence around having those first meaningful conversations. It's like you're going to commit to these providers for numerous sessions if you're in it to do the work for a long haul, right? And perhaps even over several years. We just want to make sure we're having a meaningful conversation with somebody who we're going to be sharing a lot of our vulnerability with and that it feels resonant. So that's where and why this exists. And then again, if you've, of course, watched any of my other videos, you'll know that some of these practices are pre medicating you. So I would encourage you to ask them very straightforward, are you pre medicating? Meaning, is there Versed beforehand? Are you landing me with Benadryl? These things are not common practice in ketamine infusion space. Sure, you're going to see different articles around it. Sure, providers have to give rationality for the reasons as to why they're doing it. But if you look at ketamine by itself, never, ever, ever is it suggested that you have a benzo before you go in to a ketamine infusion therapy. As a matter of fact, we'll even tell you that we want you off of benzos for at least 24 hours before you're coming in so that you get the most benefit from the infusion in and of itself. So then one would ask, if you're, why, if that's the requirement, are you giving me Versed before I work with ketamine? Providers will tell you that it's because they want to reduce anxiety. Well, you just gave an amnesic and a benzo. Of course, that's going to proverbial reduce anxiety, but only pseudoli, right? So just have the conversation, give them rationality behind it. My encouragement to you is that's a no thank you. And then another thing, right? As you can see, I think I have 11 pages total here for you guys, and that's why I wanted to unpack it before you download it, right? There are other places who are either creating some sort of 3D, 5D visualization, right? You're not necessarily seeing what's inside your mind and walking through it. You're literally being given a device that's VR that creates an experience for you. If you wanna go have a psychedelic experience, sure, that's the route to go. If you wanna go within and travel through the mind as it pertains to you as the individual of what's been acquiesced in here, then you need to go in total darkness. There are other clinics that literally will let you sit there and be on your phone. No. Well, I guess, it's only like, what are you there for? Do you just wanna go experience ketamine infusion therapy while you're on your phone? That's gonna get expensive real quick. Never do I suggest that. What I suggest is that you go in, total darkness, and allow the medicine to show you what it needs to show you and you to experience your own mind movie. So again, darkness matters, sound matters, the music matters. I see more and more comments around music in the space. And I'm happy to link what I suggest, right? But really, you need to make sure it's curated. There are so many different playlists coming out for psilocybin and even DMT that it's coming over into this space. My encouragement to you is to have the conversation. Does the provider have a curated soundtrack? Does it have words in it? Because if it does, that can also be distracting. But really, you want something that is binaural in nature and that has frequency and sound associated with a developmental process, that's important. Versus, you going in and having something curated of an 80s soundtrack that felt good to you or it reminds you of something nostalgically, because then that is going to curate an experience, right? I mean, I've even had clients that have come straight from the movies and they're like, the only thing I saw in there was Minecraft. You're like, Would you just go watch? And so it's just phenomenal when we start to really pay attention to how our consciousness gets imprinted. You just wanna have music that's resonant, that has really no words in it, and that feels intentional in your body and wasn't just thrown together in like a randomized Spotify track. Intentionality comes in. And if not, then you want to spend some time researching and curating and then have that conversation of, hey, can I bring my own music with me? This is what it is. I've listened to it numerous times. It feels good in my body. This is the experience I want to be having, then for sure. But otherwise, it's definitely worth having a conversation around. Again, my suggestion is mindfolds. It allows you to actually be with the medicine eyes open or eyes closed. Noise canceling headphones, my encouragement is that you plug it in and that you don't Bluetooth. That way you're not picking up, MapQuest or other things that can happen in the space. Plus, too, you kind of want to be hardwired into these experiences and not just saturated with even more frequency that's coming from Bluetoothing. Now, this is and can be triggering. Has your provider actually sat with the medicine, or are they just reciting information based off of some of the latest data sharing and conveying it back to you or regurgitating it back to you as if they've done the work themselves? I know. I've had some doctors tell me that you can't require that, right? Well, that's also a red flag. Uh, Not to poo poo the doctors, right? Because without them, we wouldn't be able to administer ketamine infusion therapy. So, thank you to you. But I will also say that one of the reasons that I sat out or sought out on this mission was because of the suicide rates in EMS specifically, right? 20 plus years as a paramedic, first responder. I've been in the space for a while, right? And I've watched numerous friends. I've even lost my own father to suicide. And so if you look at the number one for suicide, it's doctors. This is one of the most silently suffering professions in totality. And so for providers, it's really important that they also have sat with this medicine. Why? So they can actually speak to the truth of it. Rather than just reciting some information. And then it would also I would hope that it inspires them to have a more mindful approach of their administration so that they deduce things like emergence phenomenon or getting stuck into a one size fits all model that everybody gets zero point 0.5 milligrams per kilogram. It's a big topic for me, if you couldn't tell. Again, and I just break this down further, 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 right? And so if you again are interested, just click on the link below and you can get this free guide. Okay, so the other thing is integration, right? So this is a variable. Integration is up to the individual. At no point am I going to tell you that I'm requiring you to go to talk therapy. You may be all done with that, and not all talk therapists have any type of awareness around psychedelic assisted therapy. I mean, heck, I even had therapists say that this is illegal. No, it's not, which tells you how archaic or the last time they've actually been to school. And so, integration is what you decide to do to make sense of the medicine that is intimate and right for you. Integration can look like hiking, integration can look like surfing, integration can look like meditation, journaling, crying, processing, taking an Epsom salt bath, grounding, walking on earth, uh, becoming psychedelic, which is the integration program that I built based off the wisdom that I keep around this space. Integration has multiplicities and variables. What is going to resonate with you? It just means that it's important that you are doing something with what the medicine showed you, because otherwise, I will tell you right now, ketamine will stop working when you do. If you're not doing the work, ketamine's going to show you the same information again, and then after that, it's going to fall flat because you haven't taken active steps to move forward in your own life and mind movie to come out of self imposition or re victimization of the trauma story. And you haven't let go of previous identities or you're oscillating between dimensionality. And in that, ketamine will stop showing you information until you take active steps in forward momentum. It's pretty phenomenal, honestly. And so this is where integration is a variable. But it's important that you have a conversation because your doctor's office may actually offer some form of integration that you have never been exposed to that could be very helpful or beneficial. If they look at you like, what is integration? I would also be concerned with moving forward because it tells me they're not yet in the psychedelic space enough to be informed to have a robust program, and they may just be following the trends. And this is where becoming psychedelic comes in. Again, my name is Christy Myers. Thank you so much for listening to this. If this guide resonates with you and if you want to read through it further, please download it. It's free. It's going to come straight to your inbox. And then you have an opportunity to explore becoming psychedelic, which is the integration program that has been created from the last 25 years or, I'm 45 years old, my last 45 years on earth, and just how important this mission is. Because again, remember, these altered states of consciousness allow us to really experience who we are within. We are the medicine. Hmm. Uh, I appreciate you. There's definitely more to come. Have an amazing day.